You packed it. You trust it. That shiny silver square in your emergency kit, the space blanket that's supposed to save your life when everything goes wrong. It's lightweight, compact, and looks like NASA technology. But right now, in your glove box or bug-out bag, that space blanket could be setting you up for failure. Not because it's defective, because everything you've been told about it is wrong. Space blankets don't keep you warm, they reflect heat, but only if you understand the physics behind them. Misuse them, and you'll lose heat faster than if you had nothing at all. Tonight, we expose the survival myth that's been sold to millions and reveal the 3 critical mistakes that turn this life-saving gear into a liability. Let's start with what space blankets actually do and what they don't. That shiny Mylar material reflects up to 90% of your body's radiant heat. That sounds amazing until you understand that radiant heat accounts for only 30 to 40% of your total heat loss in most survival situations. The other 60 to 70% escapes through conduction, contact with cold ground, convection, wind stripping heat away, and evaporation, sweat or breath moisture. A space blanket does nothing to stop conduction, nothing to stop convection, and it actually worsens evaporation by trapping moisture against your skin. So while it reflects some radiant heat back to you, it fails catastrophically at the other 3 heat loss vectors. You're getting 30% protection while ignoring 70% of the problem. Mistake number 1, wrapping yourself like a burrito. This is the most common and most dangerous space blanket error. When you wrap that shiny material directly against your skin or clothing, 2 things happen. First, the Mylar conducts heat away from your body on contact points. Metallized plastic is an excellent conductor. Every point where the blanket touches your skin becomes a heat sink, pulling heat directly from your body. Second, moisture traps against your skin. Your body constantly produces sweat vapor, even when you don't feel wet. That vapor hits the impermeable Mylar surface and condenses into liquid water. Water conducts heat 25 times more efficiently than air. Now you're wrapped in a damp, conductive shell that's actively cooling you faster than ambient air would. Field tests show that a person wrapped burrito-style in a space blanket can lose core temperature 15% faster than someone with no blanket at all in humid conditions. You didn't add insulation, you added a cooling system. Mistake number 2, using it as ground insulation. This is where space blankets become genuinely dangerous. Many survival guides show people lying directly on space blankets to block ground cold. This is catastrophic physics failure. The ground conducts heat away from your body 4 times faster than air. A space blanket provides 0 insulation value against conduction. It has no loft, no trapped air pockets, no compressive resistance. Worse, the Mylar surface creates perfect contact with the ground, maximizing conductive heat transfer. Your body heat flows directly into the earth through that thin plastic sheet. Thermal imaging studies show that a person lying on a space blanket loses heat through their back 40% faster than someone lying on bare ground, because the Mylar creates better thermal contact than fabric or air gaps. If you're going to use a space blanket, never place it beneath you. It belongs above you or not at all. Mistake number 3, relying on it in windy conditions. Space blankets are paper thin. Wind penetrates them like they're not even there. But the danger isn't just wind passing through. The danger is what the wind does to the blanket itself. Mylar is an excellent conductor of heat. When wind blows across the shiny surface, it creates convective cooling on the blanket material itself. That cold blanket then conducts heat away from any part of your body it touches. It's like wrapping yourself in aluminum foil and standing in front of a fan. You're not just losing heat to the wind, you're losing heat to the wind-chilled blanket pressed against your skin. In 15-mile-per-hour winds, a space blanket can actually increase your heat loss by 20% compared to wearing loose wind-resistant clothing. The blanket isn't protecting you, it's becoming part of the problem. So when do space blankets work? They excel in one specific scenario, as a radiant barrier positioned away from your body. The key word is away. When hung 6 to 12 inches from your skin, creating an air gap between you and the reflective surface, the Mylar reflects your radiant heat back toward you, while the trapped air layer provides actual insulation. This is why indigenous peoples and experienced survivalists use space blankets as shelter liners or overhead reflectors, not body wraps. Hang it as a roof over your sleeping area, and it reflects your body heat back down, while the air gap prevents conductive loss. Position it as a windbreak wall with space between you and the material, and it reflects heat while blocking wind. The blanket isn't the insulation. The air gap is the insulation. The blanket just redirects heat into that gap. The proper space blanket protocol: 3 configurations that actually save lives. Configuration 1, emergency shelter roof. String the blanket overhead in an A-frame or lean-to shape, shiny side facing toward you. The air gap between you and the blanket creates insulation, while the Mylar reflects your body heat back into that space. This can raise ambient temperature in your shelter by 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Configuration 2, ground to overhead reflector. Drape the blanket vertically against a rock face or tree, shiny side facing your sleeping area. This blocks wind while reflecting your radiant heat back toward you. Position yourself 12 inches away from the blanket to maintain the critical air gap. Configuration 3, signal device. This is what space blankets were originally designed for: signaling rescuers. The reflective surface can be seen from miles away by aircraft or ground teams. In a true survival situation, signaling for rescue often matters more than marginal heat retention.
What to use instead of space blanket body wraps? For ground insulation, closed-cell foam pads, crumpled newspaper, flattened cardboard, or evergreen boughs. These materials create loft, trapped air pockets that resist compression and block conductive heat loss. For body insulation, wool blankets, synthetic sleeping bags, or even dry leaves stuffed into a garbage bag. These materials trap air next to your skin while allowing some moisture vapor transmission. For wind protection, windbreaker jackets, heavy-duty trash bags with head holes cut, or natural windbreaks made from branches and debris. The principle is simple. You need loft next to your body, not conductive surfaces. Air is your best insulator. Materials that trap air save lives. Materials that conduct heat kill. The moisture management crisis most survivalists ignore. Your body produces approximately 1 liter of water vapor per night through respiration and skin evaporation. In a survival situation, that moisture has nowhere to go. If trapped against your skin by an impermeable space blanket, it condenses into liquid water. That water saturates your clothing, reducing its insulation value by 50 to 70%. Wet wool retains some warmth. Wet cotton loses almost all insulation and can drop your core temperature 20 times faster than dry clothing. Space blankets accelerate this process by creating a vapor trap. The solution? Always maintain ventilation. Never seal yourself completely in any impermeable material. Leave gaps for moisture to escape. Better to feel slightly cold with dry clothing than warm with wet clothing that will freeze solid by morning. Real-world failure cases when space blanket myths cost lives. In 2022, a hiker in Colorado's San Juan Mountains died of hypothermia despite having a space blanket in his pack. Search teams found him wrapped burrito-style in the blanket, lying directly on frozen ground. His clothing was soaked with condensed sweat. The coroner's report cited inadequate insulation and moisture management as contributing factors. In 2023, 3 teenagers in Minnesota attempted a survival challenge using only space blankets for warmth. All 3 suffered severe hypothermia within 6 hours. Their blankets had trapped moisture against their skin while providing 0 ground insulation. These aren't isolated incidents. They're predictable physics failures that happen every winter to people who trusted marketing over thermodynamics. The space blanket upgrade path: what to carry instead. If weight and space are your concerns, and they should be in survival kits, consider these alternatives. Upgrade 1, SOL Emergency Bivy. This is a space blanket sewn into a bag shape with a drawstring closure. It still has moisture issues, but it creates a consistent air gap around your body and can't unwrap in wind. Upgrade 2, Heat Sheets brand blankets. These use a slightly thicker Mylar polyester laminate that resists tearing better and provides marginally better wind resistance. Upgrade 3, Wool blanket or synthetic emergency blanket. These weigh more but actually insulate through loft rather than just reflection. Upgrade 4, Closed Cell Foam Pad. At 14 ounces, it provides genuine ground insulation that space blankets can't match. The best survival kits carry multiple layers: space blanket for signaling and shelter lining, foam pad for ground insulation, and proper sleeping bag or wool blanket for body insulation. The plastic trap: why we cling to space blanket myths. Space blankets are seductive because they promise maximum protection for minimum weight. They look like high-tech NASA gear. They cost $3 at gas stations. They fit in your pocket. All of this creates a false sense of security, a cognitive bias called availability heuristic, where we overvalue what's easily available and underestimate what requires effort. But survival isn't about convenience, it's about physics. And physics doesn't care how compact your gear is. It only cares whether your heat loss exceeds your heat production. A $3 space blanket can't change that equation if you don't understand how to use it properly. Knowledge weighs nothing. Understanding thermodynamics is lighter than any piece of gear and more valuable. The 3-question space blanket test before you rely on one in an emergency. Question 1. Am I using it to create an air gap or am I wrapping it directly against my skin? If direct, stop. Question 2. Is it positioned to reflect heat into a trapped airspace or is it just covering me like a sheet? If just covering, reconfigure. Question 3. Does my setup allow moisture to escape or am I creating a vapor trap? If vapor trap, add ventilation immediately. These 3 questions take 10 seconds to ask, but can prevent hours of dangerous heat loss. They force you to think about physics rather than just deploying gear, and that thinking could save your life. Final truth: space blankets aren't evil, they're misunderstood tools. Like any tool, they work when used correctly and fail when used incorrectly. The problem isn't the blanket, it's the myth that it's a complete survival solution. It's not. It's one component of a thermal management system that must include ground insulation, moisture management, and wind protection. Used properly, as a radiant barrier in a shelter, as a signaling device, as an overhead reflector, it can save lives. Used improperly, as a body wrap, as ground insulation, as a windproof layer, it can accelerate hypothermia. The difference isn't the gear, it's your understanding. Your action plan, starting today. Open your emergency kit. Look at that space blanket. Now ask yourself, do I know how to use this, or do I just trust that it works? If you're not sure, practice tonight. Hang it as a shelter roof in your backyard. Create an air gap. Feel the difference between direct contact and proper spacing. Learn what works before you need it to work. Because in a real survival situation, there won't be YouTube tutorials or second chances. There will only be physics and your understanding of it. Master that understanding, and no piece of gear will ever become a death trap again. Stay warm, stay smart, and remember, the most dangerous survival gear isn't what fails, it's what you think works when it doesn't.